So, the title of my presentation is a mouthful. Sacred Time is One Eternal Round, Understanding the Chiastic Pattern of Temple, Cosmos, and History. What does this have to do with? Well, space, time, cosmos, and architecture are interconnected with the realm of the sacred. Yet the contemporary aesthetics of speed, newness, consumerism, and the overabundance of information have collapsed, compressed, and fragmented the human experience of what we might call sacred time. It's converted it into a profane, meaningless, linear conception of time. Some have even argued that mankind is not only threatened by the, quote, terror of time, but that humans have nearly lost their capacity to dwell in time because of recent developments in the built environment. On the other hand, nature's repetitive cycles and processes help to slow down, silence, and suspend time. They reveal the sacred character of time. The natural world teaches human beings about proportions, patterns, geometry, order, and repetitive cycles, which can be observed in plant growth, human anatomy, and celestial movements, among others. But when sacred spaces have adopted this practice, the design configurations become an expression of imago mundi, because they are conceived as downsized replicas of the universe or images of the world. According to Lindsay Jones, there is a direct parallelism between the macrocosm, the universe at large, and the architectural microcosm, the earthly built form. For the ancient world, there was an inextricable link between temple and cosmos, heaven and earth. So the objective of this study aims to help the discipline address the terror of time. How? By hopefully regaining an existential understanding of key architectural design principles that restore sacred cyclical time to human experience. And based on the comparative framework and methods of an earlier study that I worked on, the scope of this paper continues its focus on the architectural works found in Mormonism, Judaism, and Christianity. But it asks four fundamental questions. One, how is the cyclical pattern of sacred time experienced mythically through the narrative of sacred history? Two, how is sacred time conveyed astronomically through the revolutions of the cosmos? Three, how is cyclical time encountered spatially in the architecture of the temple? And four, what parallels exist in the mapping of cosmos and sacred history onto the spatial frame of temple architecture? So, sacred history. Sacred time is cyclical in nature because it is experienced in sacred space during rituals where, according to Mircea Eliade, a primordial mythical time is made present, such as in the case of the marriage of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Some date this event to cosmological signs in the zodiac, specifically the sun rising in the sign of Gemini. But from an anthropological perspective, myths are sacred narratives, often presented in a ritual drama that answer existential questions about the origins of the cosmos. But myths also serve as a vehicle of meaning. They enable us to understand the design of sacred architecture and the rituals performed therein. According to Caroline Humphrey and Piers Videspski, the meanings behind the structure of a sacred building, as well as the rituals that take place within it, can be explained through myth. If the order of the temple mirrors the order of the cosmos, It is through myth that we learn how this is so." Close quote. So in order to improve our understanding of how the temple is a scale model of the universe, we must first understand the mythicohistorical episodes pertaining to salvation history. Myths such as the cosmic narratives portrayed in the pre-exilic Israelite or Mormon temple dramas are circular in the pattern of a chiasmus. And a chiasmus, broadly speaking, is a literary pattern or a ring composition where end and the beginning share the same themes, and the midpoint marks where this pattern is mirrored or inverted. So for this particular study, the following Judeo-Christian episodes of sacred history and their chiastic structure are considered, starting first with the cosmogonic primordial era, going to the paradisal world of Eden, then the midpoint of the fallen, disordered world, going back to a messianic paradisiacal era, and finally to the perfected heavenly realm. While the Abrahamic religions have limited the duration of the cosmos in some specific number of millennia and affirm that history will finally cease in illo tempore, asserts Mircea Eliade, there still survive certain traces of the ancient doctrine of the periodic regeneration of history, such as the myth of the eternal return or sacred time as one eternal round. It is precisely because of its relationship with sacred space and ritual that myth helps us understand the circular characteristics of sacred time found among the 5-room sequence of the Mormon temple, as well as the tripartite organization of both the Jewish and Christian architecture. So cosmos. Astronomical time involves the cyclical patterns and repetitious movements of celestial bodies, such as the sun, moon, and stars, which human beings experience daily, monthly, and seasonally on an annual frequency. According to Eliade, it is a course akin to sacred time. Since the cosmos is a living organism, it then implies natural cyclic time, that is to say, circular time, which constitutes the year. For instance, when we look at the zodiac in our current system, annually the constellations move from east to west, following the months of the year. But on a broader scale, every 2,000 years, they rotate counterclockwise, moving through the signs. We have the 4 royal constellations that often mark cardinal directions. But it is where the sun rose in a particular zodiacal sign that marked time. So the zodiacs move 1 degree every 72 years. So it takes about 2,160 years to move through each zodiac. So this is what this looks like throughout the history of the earth. So at different epochs of time, the sun on the vernal equinox rose in a specifically different sign of the zodiac. What does all of this mean? At present, our Earth is about to leave the sign of Pisces and enter the Aquarian age with the 4 royal constellations aligned to the 4 cardinal directions and 4 solar points of the year. But due to its repetitive nature, however, astronomic time is easily mapped onto the spatial frame of architecture. Many cultures and religions have linked the 4 cardinal directions to the 4 seasons, the 4 solar points of the year, the 4 royal constellations, major lunar phases, as well as religious festivals. But according to 1st century architect Marcus Vitruvius, each architect should be acquainted with astronomy and the theory of the heavens, as well as possess the ability to find east, west, south, and north, the equinox, solstice, and courses of the stars. Perhaps this is one reason that most temples from the ancient world were oriented to a particular direction, with many boxed to the 4 points of the compass. Indeed, the ancient temple was a building specially designed for interpreting signs in the heavens, a sort of observatory where one gets one's bearings on the universe. The temple also functioned as a cosmic clock, since everything was tied to the calendar and the stars. Citing its applicability to Mormon temple foundation rites, Hugh Nipley offers the following observation. Coordination of time and place by the stars and the compass set the earthly temple into the framework of the cosmos. Val Brinkerhoff claims that even the creation drama presented inside Latter-day Saint temples is thus tied to the earth's seasons and the cycles of the heavens. Similar features are characteristic of Judeo-Christian sacred spaces, with examples ranging from the representations of the zodiac in ancient Palestinian synagogues. While their interpretation of how the cosmos should be represented, it varies from time to time. But one thing that should be noted is that the four royal constellations are aligned to the 4 seasons. So the temple. Architecture captures not only 3-dimensional space, but it reveals spatial time. According to Johanni Palasma, architecture is our primary instrument in relating us with space and time, and giving these dimensions a human measure. Sacred architecture in particular is unique in its ability to temporarily suspend time and allow us to experience the slow, healing flow of time, or what we're describing as sacred time. Carsten Harry similarly remarks how architecture deals with the terror of time, first of all, by wresting from an unstable, uncertain environment a more stable order, transforming chaos into cosmos. So in order for architecture to regain its existential foothold, however, Harries advocates the need for the profession to reappropriate the wisdom buried in the traditional understanding of architecture as repetition and image of the cosmos. The mapping of the annual lunar phases around the base of the Mormon temple in Salt Lake City, along with their cosmic alignments to cardinal directions, solar points of the year, and religious festivals, is one step towards this direction. The building's western tower sculptural panel of the Big Dipper constellation points to the real pole star, the North Star, the sure nail of the cosmos around which all things revolve. Here, the temple serves as a small-scale replica of the universe precisely because it is a reflection on earth of the heavenly order. While many biblical scholars agree that the Jerusalem temple was a miniature replica of the universe, the cosmic symbolism goes back even further to the 12 tribes and the Mosaic tabernacle in the wilderness. The embroidered insignias on each of the banners of the 12 tribes represented a specific zodiacal constellation. This is especially apparent in the 4 chief tribes that are placed at the cardinal directions. According to rabbinical tradition, writes Carl Friedrich Kiel and Franz Delitzsch, the standard of Judah bore the figure of a lion, that of Reuben, the likeness of a man or a man's head, that of Ephraim, the figure of an ox, and that of Dan, the figure of an eagle. Thus, the 4 insignias of the chief tribes are connected to the 4 royal constellations and cardinal directions. Several scholars have likewise noted that this cosmic imagery carries over into the apocalyptic visions and prophecies found in Numbers 24, Ezekiel 1 and 10, and Revelations 4 through 5, all with their reference to cherubim, beasts, or living creatures. At first glance, it is uncertain as to whether the 4 constellations correspond to the periods of sacred history found in the spatial layout of both the Jewish and Mormon temple. However, by rereading the mythicohistorical narrative as it processes through the temple in a clockwise direction, beginning and ending in the Western Holy of Holies, and then comparing those themes to the symbolism of the four royal constellations, it is evident that the cosmos speak of the same cyclical and chiastic pattern, particularly how the plan of salvation is one eternal round. Taurus, the bull, for instance, is first connected to the cosmogonic primordial era or war in heaven, as well as to the Western Holy of Holies or the Mormon temple creation room. Scorpio, with its adjacent constellations, reflects the scene of the paradisal world of Eden and its consequence of one's head being crushed and one's heel of their foot being bruised. Once again, this connects to the Mormon temple's garden room or the holy place in the north. Leo's reference, the lion, to the fallen, disordered world brings us back to the ancient temple's eastern courtyard or porch and the contemporary world room found in Mormonism, but it marks the center point of this chiastic structure, the midpoint where the mirror starts to turn. Moving to the constellation Aquarius, we find that it reminds us of living water that is poured out by the water bearer. And in many times, we find that this is connected to the paradisiacal Messianic era, the Mormon temple's terrestrial room, or the southern side of the holy place with its menorah, a stylized tree of life. Lastly, we return to the Holy of Holies and the perfected heavenly realm, symbolized in Mormonism by the celestial room. But being connected to Taurus once again, we find a last battle, Gog and Magog, which is in the tradition to occur prior to returning to God. But all in all, this interpretation suggests that the mythico-historical episodes of the plan of salvation were perhaps written in the stars as another witness that God's course is one eternal round. Thus, by mapping the narrative of the constellations on the spatial frame of the temple, sacred time is renewed. In the words of Mircea Eliade, in building the temple, not only was the world constructed, but cosmic time was also constructed. So in conclusion, by understanding the chiastic pattern of spatial time in the temple, astronomical time in the cosmos, and mythical time in sacred history, architects and designers can learn that the temple must continue to serve as a microcosm or miniature model of the universe, the ultimate macrocosm, in order to preserve the human experience of sacred time as one eternal round. Thank you.